Here's the take from Ives of Wedbush, writing the following. Musk diving deeper into politics is exactly the opposite direction that Tesla investors and shareholders want him to take. Dan joins us around the table. Dan, good morning.
Great to be here.
How much of a problem is this?
It's a huge problem. I mean, like, it's what we've been talking about, here in the show, for months, that you went from Trump administration, Doge, BFFs. Obviously, there was a huge moment. You had to step back from politics, and that's exactly what investors want to see. And now you poke the bear in terms of Trump, and now you're forming a political party. So the point is, I believe you've now hit a point. I think the board's going to have to get involved because this is now over. I think there's a line in the sand that he's now starting to cross, and that's the frustration. As someone that's a huge supporter of Tesla, autonomous, the golden age ahead, you cannot kind of go down this path, and I think that's why the stock's reacting.
Let's unpack that. Board involvement. Describe what that might look like.
Look, I wouldn't say it's necessarily an ultimatum, but, you cannot keep going down this path where, to start a political party ahead of the midterms, I mean, the amount of work, time, and also you alienate potentially, whether it's Republican Party, whether it's Trump. So now Trump goes from obviously a huge supporter to, is that sort of an enemy or blockade? And I think that's why the stock's reacting the way it is, because the last thing you want to see at this point, autonomous, regulatory, that now Musk goes from front seat in the White House to ultimately you become more of a foe.
When you say ultimatum, you mean the board saying to him, if you continue this behavior, you can no longer be CEO.
Look, I think the board's it's a tricky path, right, for the board. And this is not a board that necessarily has had such a huge backbone when it comes to Musk. But I do think, look, investors, there's exhaustion.
Do you want to see a new CEO?
Look, I want Musk to stay CEO as Tesla, because in my view, Musk is Tesla, Tesla is Musk, the biggest asset of Tesla. But this political journey that he continues to go through, I think it just comes down to investors have hit a point where they want him focused on Tesla and AI. And every time that happens, he just continues to go further and further into the political theater.
He might not be just burning bridges in the Beltway. I want to read you this quote from the Wall Street Journal reporting overnight. Because of the Musk-Trump feud, Beijing no longer views the Tesla CEO as a geopolitical asset and will shy away from publicly courting him. Is he going to have problems outside of the United States as well because of his political involvement in the United States?
Look, it goes back to, like, if you just take a step back here, it's like, let's try in a way to almost alienate every aspect of the ecosystem, right? In terms of the core buyer, to now maybe even Republicans, to what you're seeing in China. Look, China, that's the hearts and lungs of Tesla. I continue to believe Musk is an asset there, and will play that sort of, nice in the sandbox. But it does show you become an enemy or a foe to Trump. What does that do in the political and obviously the geopolitical? And I think that's part. Look, that's part of the issue here, is that you start to go into a quicksand situation where I think in the view of investors, there's really no upside. And you can say, okay, if you get midterms and you have some success and he has political power, but that's, independents have never had really success in the US, but it's massive risk. That's why the stock's selling off the way it is.
The analyst community is not exactly bulled up on this stock. It's actually very divided. If you take the 12-month consensus price target, the average is about $298 right now, and that's below where we closed on Thursday. How well understood are these risks as they manifest and evolve over the weekend?
Well, I think the risks now, they continue to expand. And I think that's part of the issue, is that, okay, here it is, you go back to a few weeks ago, robotaxi, autonomous, Musk 100% committed. Now it's like, hey, over the weekend while eating a hot dog and doing a July 4th barbecue, hey, let's start a political party. Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, we're going to do that. So that's, as an investor, it's the last thing and I heard over the weekend, the last thing you want to see is him go down this path. But I think the bigger worry is as he goes further and further down the path, from a Tesla perspective, does that maybe add risk in terms of Trump becoming more of a blockade rather around autonomous and around some of the...
Just describe what that means. What do you mean by that? What could he do?
A big thing is around the federal roadmap in terms of autonomous. I mean, now this is a key few years ahead for Tesla, going not just from Austin, but 25 cities over the next year. If you start to put more blockades in terms of things that they need to meet in order to get on the road, if instead of more of a green light, it's a little more of a yellow or red light. That's the worry. That's what the stock's selling off. It's the fear that over the next 6, 12, 18 months, Trump starts to put little blockades in that.
But at the end of the day, the president is looking out for America's interest. If he just does that, it might hurt Elon Musk, but also might hurt the United States when it comes to competition with China.
And that's why we've said the biggest asset when it comes to autonomous is Tesla, because when you think of Waymos, they're not going to scale at any level relative to Tesla. So when you're competing with China, Tesla and Musk is an asset, no different than Jensen. That's why, look, the hope is at one point, is there some sort of meeting between Musk, Trump? Can they sort of get to some resolution? The problem is every week it gets further and further, and this is not what you want to see. Just think about it in the context of every other tech company, from Nadella, from Jensen, from OpenAI, from Oracle, heading all down the AI path. You don't want to see Musk now going down the political path.
How much time does he have? You've got a price target of 500 in a pre-market right now. We're at 294. How much time does he have to back away from this?
I mean, I think you basically have what I view as kind of like 90 days, 3 months. I mean, I think there's a 90-day sort of, I could see like some sort of ultimatum where if he continues to go down the path, no different than how we view with Doge and Trump, where he basically on that conference call had to back off. This is a, I wouldn't necessarily say a moment of truth, but this is a time now for Musk. He needs to choose, and you can't keep having these 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And that's why the exhaustion is starting to play out in Tesla stock.